The wind whispered across the dry hills of Chittering Valley, just north of Perth. Hannah Lockwood stood beside her father's old utility truck, staring at the crumbling cottage that had appeared in her late grandmother's will. It looked abandoned, with ivy crawling up its sandstone walls and a rusted gate swinging loosely. Yet, something about it pulled her in, like a forgotten melody she couldn't resist humming. The air smelt of eucalyptus and dust. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant cry of a magpie and the ticking of the engine cooling down. Her father had died years ago. Now her grandmother, Eleanor, too. And suddenly, here she was, holding a brass key and an envelope that simply read, "Find the truth, Hannah." As she stepped inside, the door creaked as if sighing from long sleep. Dust floated in the light beams cutting through boarded windows. The air was dense. Old portraits hung crooked and books lay open, as though someone had been there recently. Hannah ran her fingers over a leather-bound journal on the table. It bore her grandmother's initials, but when she opened it, the handwriting wasn't Eleanor's. It was neat, deliberate, masculine. She doesn't know yet, but she will. That was all it said on the first page. Chills ran down her arms. The silence deepened. A floorboard groaned behind her. Hannah turned sharply. The hallway was empty, or so it seemed. She clutched the journal and walked further into the cottage, heart pounding. In the corner of the room, behind a dusty curtain, she found a metal box bolted to the floor. The lock was newer than everything else. Modern. Out of place. She knelt down, examining it. Her grandmother's brass key wouldn't fit. Suddenly, a knock echoed from the front door. 3 slow knocks. She wasn't expecting anyone. She rose slowly, backing into the shadows. Another knock. Then silence. Through the grimy window, she could see no car. No person. Only the quiet shimmer of heat rising from the road. She waited. And then the door handle turned. The door creaked open with a hesitant groan. But there was no one there. Hannah stepped outside, the harsh sun momentarily blinding her. The gravel crunched beneath her boots as she scanned the surrounding bushland. Nothing. Not a bird in the sky. Not even the rustle of wind. Just the silence, thick and pressing. Then she saw him. A man, standing by the edge of the road some 50 meters away, in a wide-brimmed hat and long coat. Still as stone. Watching. Hannah froze. The man raised one hand slowly, not to wave, but as if pointing, directly at the cottage. Then, without a word, he turned and vanished into the scrub. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. She rushed after him, but the bush swallowed her steps. Twigs snapped beneath her as she pushed through dense undergrowth. The man was gone. Back at the cottage, the door was now wide open, and on the wooden floor inside, a second page from the journal lay spread, although she had not dropped it. The handwriting was the same. You must remember, the key is not what it opens, but what it hides. Inside the cottage, Hannah examined the journal more carefully. Several pages were torn out. Some had diagrams, strange symbols, coordinates, and sketches of underground tunnels. One photograph had been tucked between the pages. It was old, black and white, and showed a woman in her 20s standing beside the same cottage. But she was not Eleanor. On the back of the photo, in the same handwriting, were the words, "She tried to stop me." A chill ran down Hannah's spine. Who was the woman? And what was she trying to stop? She turned the page and found a date scribbled in the corner, April 6, 1985. That was the year her father disappeared for 6 weeks, claiming he had gone hiking alone. Hannah had never believed him. Could this be connected? She took the photo to the Chittering local archives. There, an elderly librarian named Mr. Whitlow recognized the woman instantly. That's Miriam Dunlop. Vanished in 1986. Her case was never solved. As Hannah left the archive, she spotted the man in the hat again, watching her from across the street. But when she crossed the road, he was gone. Back at the cottage, Hannah noticed a draft coming from behind a bookshelf. She moved it with effort, revealing a narrow wooden door. It was locked, but this time, the brass key fit perfectly. Inside was a small room with a single chair, a typewriter, and walls covered in yellowed pages. Each page contained the same phrase, over and over. Memory is the prison we build with our own hands. On the chair sat another journal. This one bore her father's name. She opened it. The first entry read, "If you're reading this, I've failed. But maybe you won't." Hannah trembled. Her father had known about all this. Had he written the first journal too? Or was there someone else? She took the journal and left the room. As she stepped out, the man in the hat stood at the edge of the property again. This time he didn't move. He simply watched. Unable to sleep, Hannah explored the cottage by lantern. Under a loose floorboard in the kitchen, she discovered a rolled-up canvas map. It showed a network of tunnels beneath the valley, marked with red circles. One location was labeled simply, "The Engine." She laid the map on the table, comparing it with the journal notes. Her father had drawn the same symbols. The engine appeared to be beneath an old water tank west of the property. At dawn, she hiked toward the tank, her heart thumping. As she arrived, she found the entrance hidden under the rusted basin, an iron hatch, padlocked shut. But someone had been there recently. The earth was disturbed. A boot print. Fresh. Suddenly, from the trees, a voice called her name. Hannah. She spun around. No one. Then she saw it. Carved into the bark of a nearby tree, her name and the date. Tomorrow's date. Determined, Hannah returned the next day with tools. She broke the lock and descended into the dark. The tunnel smelled of damp rock and rust. Her torch flickered as she moved deeper. Strange markings lined the walls. Geometric, obsessive, familiar. Halfway through the tunnel, she found an old camp. Blankets, empty cans, and a mirror. When she looked into it, she didn't see her reflection. She saw her father. Younger. Crying. Then a whisper. "You have to finish what I couldn't." She turned, and the tunnel behind her was no longer there. Only stone. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber, dimly lit by a flickering generator. In the center stood a massive device, part mechanical, part organic, humming with life. The engine. Wires pulsed like veins. At its base was a seat, and behind it a wall of screens. On each screen, images of people, all of them sleeping, including one of Hannah. A panel read, "Memory stabilized. Host, Eleanor." Had her grandmother used this? Was it what preserved her mind until death? The man in the hat stepped from the shadows. "Now you see it." He reached for the panel, and everything went black. Hannah awoke in the cottage, but something was off. The dust was gone. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. Fresh tea brewed in the kitchen. Eleanor sat at the table, smiling. "You came back. Just like I hoped." But something in her eyes was wrong. Rehearsed. Programmed. Hannah realized this wasn't real. The engine had placed her inside a memory. She had to break out. She knocked over the teacup. The porcelain shattered, and the walls began to flicker. Eleanor's voice became distorted. "Don't leave me here." Hannah tore through the memory. The garden faded. She was back in the tunnel, staring at the engine. On the floor lay another journal, open to the final entry. "We built it to preserve ourselves. But memory decays. It distorts. It traps." The man in the hat knelt beside the engine, now aged and weary. "I tried to protect you from it. But it needs a host. Always." He looked up. "Choose. Stay with her, or destroy it." Hannah stood before the engine. Her fingers hovered over the control panel. One switch would shut it down. The other, preserve the memory forever. She thought of Eleanor, of her father, of the woman in the photograph. She pulled the first switch. The engine wailed. Lights burst. The man vanished like dust and wind. The cottage collapsed around her. Light poured in. And then, silence. Hannah stood alone in the valley. Free.